So, what am I going to talk about today? Well, I'm actually going to talk about a phenomena I've noticed as I've gotten older, as I became an adult. The phenomena of the fake expert. What do I mean by this? I don't mean the guy who's has a YouTube channel and claims to be a guru of fitness or whatever, and they're just talking out of their ass or they're selling some kind of snake oil. That's not the kind of fake expert that I'm concerned about. I don't care. People can declare themselves, they can think whatever works, and if it does, it does. If it doesn't, whatever. What I'm talking about is the got people who get degrees in things. So what do I mean by that? Well, a good example was a Twitter exchange I had yesterday with some guy named Dylan. It was a blue check mark. I don't know much about him. Basically, he said something along the lines of like, "Oh, the U.S. We should have pulled out of Afghanistan after we killed Bin Laden, so and so." I think that's what it initially started at, and I agree with that. I think we've way overstayed. Like it's become a mess. It's become a political football, and that's why the president's trying to leave now, and he's getting resistance from all sides. But I also said that the Afghans do have some agency here. They could have ended this anytime they wanted, but they don't because they don't have any spine. The Taliban could negotiate, but they don't because they're not very good people. And the Afghans, they keep blue on what they call it, green on blue shootings, and they're not really willing to fight for their own freedom. I think Sargon says it a lot because I think it's from Starship Troopers originally. Was the something given has no value. Maybe it's not from Starship Troopers originally, but that's why I associate it with. And I think it's kind of like that with Afghanistan, where there's a lot of these regular Afghan nationals. Maybe they're not Taliban, but they didn't have to fight for they're suddenly handed a country. It's the same thing in Iraq too. When we left all of a sudden in 2014. And ISIS immediately came in and took over. And the reason is because a lot of these Iraqis didn't have to fight for their freedom. So when ISIS came rolling, they weren't willing to fight to keep their territory even. So it's tough. It's a cultural thing. There's a lot of things going on. Whatever. Point is that the Afghans have responsibility in this as much as we do. And we're trying to leave, and the Afghans are not making it any easier. Well, this triggered the guy. The guy started going off, we invaded them. And Bin Laden was in Pakistan. Not the time we landed. He was in Afghanistan being harbored by the Taliban when we first showed up. And then it was, the war was illegal. I was like, the war wasn't illegal. What are you talking about? Like, the NATO charter was activated and, the Congress authorized the operation. And, a little thing called 9/11 happened. And it was, you didn't get UN Security Council clearance. We don't need UN Security Council clearance to do stuff. You know who sits on the UN Security Council? China and Russia. You're telling me that if they start a war with us, but the UN Security Council says it's A-OK, that makes it legal? Stupid. We're not governed by international bodies. The UN can pass whatever it wants, and if our Constitution and Congress, it goes above that. Period. We're not part of an international governing body. It's crazy. But the guy was flippant and just convinced that he was correct. And then he goes on and he says, well, I'm, whatever, graduate degree in Middle East studies. And he's what was it? Something. Oh yeah, he's an advisor on Middle East and he wrote a book. He's being paid lots of money by people for his opinions on these things. That doesn't impress me because people are paid a lot of money to say things passionately that other people believe. Like if you say something that they agree with and you're in the academic community, like you want to say, like capitalism is white supremacy or something, yeah, you're gonna get your degree and you're gonna get your books and you're gonna get paid a lot of money because people want to hear that. And it's the same thing with this Middle East expert bullshit. The guy thinks he's got some sort of magical insight because he served one tour over there, and he thinks the war was illegal. But he ignores the fact that the Taliban are pretty hard, and they were harboring bin Laden. So our initial entry into that war, it's acting like the Taliban had absolutely no agency in what was going on. That's just revisionist. We got to be fair here. I mean, I'm not in favor of the protracted conflict. I'm not in favor of basically the Bush doctrine of just kind of willy-nilly invading and then trying to do nation building. But I can't even have that conversation with somebody like that, because it's all or nothing. Either we're the great Satan, or I want to bomb every country on the planet. Guy's not listening, and that's what I mean by he's a fake expert. And this is not only in foreign policy studies do you see these kind of people, because you'll see, especially people who are, basically grievance studies with the Middle East, particularly if you look into Palestine and stuff. They'll throw degrees at you for basically the most creative way you could be anti-Semitic without actually saying you're anti-Semitic. That's beside the point. I don't know this guy, so I'm not accusing him of that. But Paul Krugman's a good example. Renowned economist. Highly paid for his opinions. Expert. He's wrong on almost every single economic prediction and particularly philosophy that he pushes. He's constantly wrong. Wrong all the time. Still in the payroll, still takes a ton of money, always wrong. Is he an expert on the economy? I guess you could say that by the flat definition of expert. But is he actually an expert? No. He pushes an ideology. That's all he does. Doesn't have discussion. He doesn't understand basic economics, or he rejects it on principle, because he thinks things should be run more centralized. He says what politicians on, I guess, the left in that case want him to say, so he can make dire predictions, and then when they don't come true, he's never held accountable. He's just a crap thrower, and that's how a lot of these foreign policy experts are as well. They just want to throw crap at the United States, because we couldn't, the Afghans couldn't possibly have agency. They're just the victims in all this. Afghans have responsibilities to themselves. The Iraqis have responsibilities. It's not just us. We're not the only ones breaking shit and causing trouble around the planet. I mean, I don't see this guy calling out the Chinese with all they've been doing in Central Africa. I mean, what about the genocide in China that's going on with the Uyghurs? These people don't say these things. They just find the opportunity to criticize the United States in some way. And it's really revisionist to go back and claim that there was no pretext to enter Afghanistan. There was. He was harboring bin Laden. Bin Laden had been at war with us for years. We probably should have went after bin Laden in 93 when the first World Trade Center attack happened. In the meantime, you got the Kenya bombings and the coal and then other embassy stuff, and just until they finally got our attention in Manhattan, basically, by taking 2 buildings down. We probably should have dealt with that beforehand. But, we didn't. We're hands off. We'll think it goes away. Fine, there's arguments at the time both ways. But were we not justified in going to get bin Laden? And the Taliban who was harboring them were basically casualties of it. Was that not justified to go after those people? It was. And we shouldn't pretend it isn't. And we shouldn't pretend that the U.S. wasn't essentially a victim in this. We're not perfect. We made mistakes. We've overstayed in Afghanistan. We didn't make all the best strategic, political, tactical decisions. Iraq's looking like that was ill-conceived from the beginning. We made better choices as we were there for somewhat, but I'll get into that later. But we're not perfect. We know that, but we are the good guys. The good guys are allowed to be flawed. We're allowed to make mistakes. And the Taliban, they're not good people. They're not good. You're harboring bin Laden, and then you wonder why the bombs are falling on you after something like 9/11. The Taliban could have said, okay, we don't want Afghanistan to get completely wrecked, by you Westerners who don't know what you're doing. So we're going to hand over bin Laden because he, okay, he trained here and we facilitated him, but he's poked the bear. Why don't they could have handed him over? And what would have happened? The U.S. would have, oh, okay, thanks. That probably would have been it. I mean, knowing the Bush administration probably would have still would have ended up going to somewhere. But it's acting like the Taliban are don't have agency, that they're somehow victims. Come on, that's ridiculous. But this guy, he'll get paid to say that because it's it's edgy. It absolves the rest of the world of responsibility, and it paints the U.S. as uniquely evil, because that's a thing that sells on the far left now. Guy accused me of being alt-right. I said, what the hell do you mean by that? He said, well, you've been liking alt-right things and retweeting alt-right things. And I looked through, and most recent people I had retweeted at that point were Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, maybe, I think Mike Cernovich, if that's something I retweeted, but like Dave Rubin and Tim Pool, like alt-right, apparently. I'm definitely not alt-right. And those people are definitely not alt-right. So it becomes person's a fake expert. They say stuff passionately, they say mean things, they say personal attacks, and then they waive their credentials. Like that makes him any more right on the Taliban being responsible or not being responsible. Now, guy's wrong. I don't care who signed his, gave him a book deal. I don't care who gave him his degree. That's factually inaccurate. And no more than him calling me alt-right makes me alt-right. So just be aware of these people, because they're often propped up by either the mainstream media or little focus agent. I won't say agencies, but like think tanks. They prop these people up, and it's not because what they're saying has any truth to it. Often it doesn't have any value to it either. But it's because they're saying something in a way where they can present themselves as an expert, and they can push a specific ideology, push a specific narrative, and not look at things that are not look at things objectively. I'm not perfect. I don't always get analysis correct. I mean, I'm right a lot, but I guess that's a talent as much as it is luck. But this guy, he's he's an expert. He's got the degree that says he's an expert. If you're not given the Taliban agency, you're not an expert. You're just somebody. You're a paid shill to push an ideology. Doesn't make you any more right that somebody is willing to pay you money for your opinions. It doesn't make your opinion more valid. So that's all. I just wanted to talk about that because I see that a lot on Twitter. And the guy came after me personally. He said some pretty nasty stuff. And I didn't really go after him. I mean, I'm disparaging him now, but I literally just added to the discussion. I said, look, we should probably look at what the Afghans are doing as well. And that turned into this whole dude making all kinds of assumptions. So, whatever. That's all.